Hi everyone, Aislinn here from Minister4happiness and welcome to this week's story time. Each week I share an inspiring story, one for you to reflect upon and hopefully take the lesson into your life. And this week's story is about the wonderful Mel Robbins, author of The 5-Second Rule and the recent book, The High Five Habit, which I'd highly recommend. And I've borrowed this story from Mel's book because I think it's a really wonderful story with a fantastic life lesson in it. So I hope you enjoy the story. I've titled it, What Happens When You Give Yourself Permission? In 1999, Mel Robbins was a senior in college. Her parents went to visit her in Vermont, and as parents do, they wanted to take her out for something to eat. They went to Simon Pearce, which was a famous glass-blowing mill. And when Mel walked into the restaurant, she was immediately taken in by a painting on the wall of a Vermont landscape. The painting was about the size of a door turned on its side. And she truly felt like everything around her disappeared, and she was practically standing in the painting, experiencing this landscape. She had never had this kind of experience before, and it really took her aback. When she finally came back into the room as such, she decided there and then that she was going to buy this painting. She knew she was going to own this painting someday. She took a look at the price tag and it was $3,000. So immediately she thought, okay, I'm not going to own it today. And she sat down with her family. But the painting never really left her mind. For years, she would think about the painting. Whenever someone mentioned Vermont, she thought about the painting. 10 years later, herself and her husband, her now husband, then fiance Chris, were going to Vermont to visit there because of the change of seasons and the lovely leaves changing. And she said to him that we have to go visit the mill, the Simon Pearce mill, because she wanted to show him the painting by the famous Gail Shepherd. When they visited, they entered the restaurant, looked around and couldn't find the painting anywhere. Mel wasn't surprised. She said she would have been more surprised if it was still there. Chris was more disappointed than her, but she didn't make it to be a big deal because she knew in her mind she was going to own this painting someday. She just knew it. A few years later, when her and Chris were married and she was pregnant, it was coming up to her birthday. And Chris got her family to chip in and they all gave her money. And he said, why don't you just buy yourself something nice? Mel decided she wanted to buy a Gail Shepherd painting. So she went about calling the mill and asking if they could send her some Polaroids of the pictures by Gail Shepherd for her to choose from because she'd like to purchase one. She told her budget and she was told that they would send her some of the smaller works by Gail Shepherd. Obviously her budget wasn't enough to stretch to the bigger paintings. But Mel inquired, perhaps you might know the painting. She described it in great detail. But the kind gentleman on the end of the phone said he didn't know that painting at all and it was probably gone now. However, he was happy to give her Gail Shepherd's number. Mel was blown away. She took the number and for days grappled with the idea of picking up the phone to call Gail. But eventually she came up with the courage and she made the call. She ranted on to Gail Shepherd about the painting and her experience in the mill that time 10 years ago when she walked in and everything disappeared, and she described every detail of the painting to Gail. She said she could almost hear Gail thinking on the other end of the phone. And eventually Gail said, Mel, I really don't know which one you're referring to, if I'm honest, because I've painted so many landscapes over my career and I'd hate to, say I have it and I'm not sure if it's the right one. So why don't you and your husband Chris come to visit the mill? I'll show you around, tell you about the paintings, and if we can't find it there, you can come back to my studio and pick one. To which Mel was absolutely delighted. So herself and her husband, a month later, went to visit Gail and her husband. They toured them around the mill. They were such a lovely couple, so friendly and kind and hospitable. Mel was blown away, but also felt really bad. She was 8 months pregnant, and as she walked around looking at the paintings, looking at the price tag, she realised she couldn't afford these. Most of the paintings were 10 times more than the meagre $500 she had in her pocket. She felt like an imposter. What was she doing? Why was she buying a painting? Who was she to buy a painting? She felt like she was wasting this lady's time. But after a while, Gail asked Mel to sit down. There was something she wanted to tell her. And at that, Gail explained that when Mel rang, she knew exactly what painting she was referring to. In fact, only twice in Gail's life had she ever painted the same landscape twice. And one of those times was the picture Mel was referring to. And she had that sister painting back in her studio. Gail's husband explained that when Mel had rang her, it was as if Gail had seen a ghost. She couldn't believe that this person was calling her, telling her, describing to her the picture and her experience. Mel was really embarrassed and turned to her husband and said, "Please promise me someday when we can afford it, we'll come back and buy the painting." But Chris was straight in there and asked Gail, how much for the painting? To which Gail said, for Mel, $500. Because obviously when I was painting it for her. And now that painting hangs in Mel Robbins' house. And if you do get the book, The High Five Habit, which I'd recommend, it is on the back of the cover of the book, a picture of Mel standing with that painting. And it's there in her book, The High Five Habit, to point out to us that when you really want something and it is that important to you, your mind will find a way to get it. And I think this is a wonderful story with a wonderful lesson in it. Because all of us want a picture, a painting, a place to visit, or a person that we want in our lives. And it might take longer than we anticipate for it to show up, but never give up. Give yourself permission to want what you want, and trust that your mind will find a way to get it for you, just like Mel with this painting. So I hope you enjoy this week's story, and I hope you take the lesson into your life. And as always, I'd ask that you like and share these videos, because you never know who this lesson might speak to. This might be something that will change someone's life for the better. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to my YouTube channel so you can get these stories every week. And until next week, stay healthy, stay happy, and stay safe. Bye.